What is the dumbest thing you did, because you were corny? NSFW. I almost jerked off, while driving down the highway once, but then I thought, if they found my mangled corpse in the wreck, with my hand around my D, my family would be really disappointed. So my brain won that battle. Pre-nut clarity. Sounds like we found a unicorn. The first guy in history of Reddit, with pre-nut clarity. Dated a girl once that masturbated a few times while driving. She also did it in the office bathroom fairly regularly. Girl just couldn't keep her hands off herself. Or other dudes' DS, but that's a story for another day. When I was a kid, my dad would frequently take me to his job, and give me meaningless tasks to help him out. He was a property manager for a secure gov building, federal guards at the doors etc. Anyways, he had his office in the basement, and was left alone down there, by everyone else in the building. He would smoke cigarettes down there, blast music etc. When I was 13, I went with him to work one day, and he gave me the job of using an electric sander, to take grime off of copper pipes in one of the machine rooms. I was left alone to my task for hours, and about an hour in, I realized how incredibly powerful the vibration was on the sander. One thing led to another and I ended up grinding the handle of the sander on my D. After I finished, I remember, even at 13, saying to myself, "You're a really weird dude." Never told anyone, till now. Paid for a corn subscription, that I didn't realize I was still paying for, until 1.5 years later. $1,135 for one orgasm. Haha man, I did this back in the late 90s, and I could not, for the life of me, cancel the subscription, so I had to go to the bank, and cancel my card. I was helping my dad close up the sailboat for the winter. We took the seat cushions out, and the long ones had to go in the car between us, kind of stacked up like a wall, so we could only see each other's heads. Teenage hormones kicked in, on the hour ride home, and I proceeded to rub one out, while looking out the window. Many moons later, I told my brothers, who then proceeded to tell my dad. I always wondered, why you were so quiet on that trip. Decided to embait into a urinal, because I was bored and corny, studying for finals when I was in college. I studied in an empty classroom, in the creepiest old building on campus, so that I could be completely focused and not be distracted. I hadn't seen anybody in that building for 3 hours, so I didn't feel the need to lock the bathroom door or do my business in a stall, like a normal person. So I'm going to town on myself and suddenly the bathroom door opens, and I stop mid-fap. Foreskin noises stops suddenly. I just stood there holding my erect penis for a second, put it back in, and leave without making eye contact. Still have no idea who that person was, but they definitely knew what I was doing, and that I'm effing weird. Paid $2 for a massage app on my Xbox, that was supposed to make my controller vibrate. It didn't do anything for me, and I forgot to refund it, so now I just have this random ass massage game, in my library. Real gamers find a way to get the game to make the controller vibrate, for example in Star Wars BF2 on the PS2, if you use the clone commander with the infinite ammo cheat, and use an elastic band, to squeeze down the fire button, you can make it vibrate indefinitely. Don't ask me how I know this information. In Borderlands 2, there is gun named Good Touch, that you acquire tipping plus 50k to Moxie. The gun makes controller vibrate non-stop, while equipped. Drove 4 hours to the beach to camp with a buddy of mine. He stood me up, and ghosted me. The icing on the cake was, losing my keys in the sand, and having to pay $300 for a new set to be cut. Edit, yes, my new key really cost that much. It was a 16 Jeep, and those stupid little chips are needed to make your key actually turn over the engine. So all of that was the cost of the key, programming the key, and the labor for the locksmith. I had about a mile stretch where I lost them, so I'm not sure how handy a metal detector would have been. I definitely wouldn't have been opposed to using one, though, if I had one handy. Jerked off at the top of a mountain, looking over my city, as doing something forbidden was an interesting idea. Well, the view was amazing, but I was scared to get caught. Looking back, if someone would caught me, I had serious issues now. I was talking about this the other day, lol. I once walked 3 miles, at 2 a.m., during a snowstorm, in -3 degrees, plus a serious wind chill, temperatures, when my girlfriend called, and said that her parents were gone for the weekend. The things a corny 16-year-old kid will do to get laid. LOL. Several years back, a woman I had been flirting with, called me in the middle of the night one time. because she wasn't feeling well and asked if I could pick up some medicine and bring it to her place. Went to her place, not expecting too much other than maybe earning some brownie points for dropping off the meds. Anyway, she invites me in and asks if I could spend the night with her. That of course gets me all titillated. However, by the time we get into bed, she's all tired and drowsy, despite her best attempt at acting seductive. Next thing I know, I'm lying in bed next to her, with my arm pinned under her body, while she's snoring away and farting. I end up lying like that for the rest of the night. Got maybe 30 minutes of sleep that entire night, and of course, I then had to get up to work a whole shift in the morning. At least I did earn some brownie points for that, because we ended up dating for not quite a year afterwards. Had something similar happen 30 years ago. I went to the bar one night for a beer. I spotted one of my old girlfriends there, sitting at a table with a bunch of foreign sailors. She looked like she was tripped out, and not all there. I got her up on the dance floor, and asked if she was okay. She said she wasn't, so I waltzed her to the fire exit and took her home. I suspected they had slipped a roofie or something in her drink. I sat up by her bed, all night, to make sure she was okay. She was fine in the morning, and remembered enough about the night before, that I didn't have to do any explaining. I also had to work after. That part wasn't any fun either. Dyed my hair black. My roommate was doing it and the girl helping him was redonkulously hot. She came into the living room and told me, "We have some extra dye, I think you would look hot with black hair." I looked at her, in that lime green tube top, and said, "That sounds like a great idea." I found out I was allergic to hair dye when, 3 days later, my head swelled up, and I looked like that orc general that attacked Minas Tirith in Return of the King, with a full head of Elvis black hair. It took a whole month of medication for it to go away, as my head was bright red under the hair, and secreting a fluid that made my hair hard as a rock. Fun times. Edit, since it keeps coming up, no, I did not hook up with her. Especially not in orc face. Underage. Many years ago, me and my current wife were very little corny people. We used to go have sex under this highway underpass, a little off the beaten path, because our parents were always home. Well, it was also near a community center type building. One day, when we were walking through the woods to get there, someone thought they seen a man abducting a child. My wife has always been very short. Yes, it was me. We are the same age, just have a crazy height difference, and I have had a beard from a young age, haha. Anyways, long story long, I was getting a BJ and a cop came down to the underpass, from the highway up above, and yelled freeze. Let me tell you, we both froze. She wouldn't move and had her face covered, with my D still in her mouth. Then the cop just yelled at us, saying, "Can't you guys be doing this at home?" Said he could see I wasn't underage, and told us about the call. It was the most embarrassing thing to ever happen. We didn't even bring it up again for a few years. Now we are married, and it is a funny memory. We even went back there to mess around a year ago. When I was in the 8th grade, my teacher was a MILF. It was during English, while everyone was working on their essays, I was busy rubbing one out, under the table. Finished in my boxers, then the post-nut clarity kicked in, and I realized I had to wear those boxers all day. I was dating a girl at work and we would regularly have sex at her side of our business complex. Though she was part of the same company, she was part of a separate regional division and not part of corporate, so her office was typically always empty, besides her. One time we were really hot and heavy into it inside the restroom, and against our better judgment, we decided anal was a good idea. So we did our thing, and I blew the biggest deepest load into her ass imaginable. As I pulled out, there was a fair amount of poop on my D, surprise anal and all, and I walk over to the sink to try and wash it off. As I'm rinsing myself into the sink, we hear the door to our office open, and a large group of co-workers walk in. I panic, and immediately try to put my D away, and as I drop from my tiptoes, I slam my nutsack up against the wall of the sink, and pull my taint skin so hard, I almost buckled in pain. She runs out of the restroom and closes the door behind her, and I'm sitting in the dark on the toilet seat, with shit on my D, and balls hurting, contemplating my life choices. I had it so bad for this Chinese girl, at university, back in 2004, and she would not give me the time of day. I did everything I possibly could. Then in a moment of insane desperation and browsing shit, during the earlier days of the internet, I found some sort of self-proclaimed wizard, living in California, who specialized in love spells, and I shit you not, my 20-year-old brain thought it was a good idea to send said wizard, $200 to cast the spell. Suffice it to say, the spell did not work. To this day I still can't believe how stupid I was. Male hormones are ridiculous things. Connected with a friend's ex, who I knew had feelings for me. Went to catch up over lunch, ended up spending all day drinking with her, then fingered her at the outdoor area of an absolutely packed bar. Neither of us were staying in places we could have people spend the night, so hired a late hotel room. Get in the door, she immediately vomits all over the room, and spent the next 2 hours crying on the floor saying she loved me, while I did my best to clean up. Whoops. In my senior year of high school, I was supposed to take AP tests all day. It would have looked good for college. Well, all the other grades had the day off, and my boyfriend was a year younger, thus being a grade below me. He picked me up to take me to school, and since his mom worked all day, we went right to his house since we couldn't do mine, because my parents worked from home. It went great until his mom came home to check on him. So he basically shoved me into his closet. It wouldn't have been a problem except it wasn't even like a full closet. It was half the size of standard closets. She left, and then decided to come back and bring him lunch. I was in that closet for over 2 hours, and my phone was at 10% when I first crawled in there. I ended up just sitting in the dark for about 45 minutes of it. Anyway, our wedding is in a few months. I had intense sex with someone, after not sleeping the previous night, and not having enough water or eating anything the entire day, and fainted right after. I was incredibly stressed and focused on work all night and day, before she got to my apartment. We originally had planned to get me some food and water first, but somehow ended up talking in depth about our weird, ambiguous relationship and our feelings, which got really emotional, and that led to sex. Despite my exhaustion, I found a hidden well of energy within myself, and went at it really hard. It was honestly great, much better than I expected given my state. But afterward, when she was actually going to order food, I went to the bathroom to wash up, and suddenly realized I felt nauseous. No matter how hungry I had been a moment prior, the thought of eating was now repulsive, unthinkable. I became very hot and started sweating, felt weak and shaky. I tried to leave the bathroom and called out to her for help. I woke up on the bathroom floor 15 seconds later, by her count. I apparently collapsed and briefly lost consciousness, and she claimed she tried to catch me, but couldn't reach in time. I'm lucky I didn't seriously injure myself on one of the hard edges in there. Just hurt my shoulder a little. Jerked off with some heated lotion, like icy hot. Burned so bad for days. Also jacked off in the bath once, not thinking, because I was a dumb kid. Got done and it was stuck to my whole body, and was crusty, like old gym sock. Also wore a shirt to school I had whacked off on, and didn't notice, though my baby sauce was all over it. That actually happened twice. I was a dirty teenager, I guess. Drove in 115, each way, for 4 minutes of sex. Her odor was so bad, I couldn't continue. I've had this happen. This random chick messaged me on POF, asking if I wanted to come over at 2 a.m. Stupid horny 19 years old me decided to jump into my Jeep and do 180 kilometers per hour the entire way. We start making out, and right away, I notice her breath is bad. Like the Boy Scout I was, I pressed on. Things worked into her giving me a dry hand job, with extra special attention to the head. It was agony. She actually gave me a friction burn on the top of my littler feller. She was so terrible at it. Finally took her panties off, and quite literally gagged at the smell. The stench of BO, a freshly opened can of tuna, and piss, just emanated from her jungle bush. I turned right around and drove the 2 hours back home, at 4 a.m., completely defeated. Sometimes cookies don't smell great, no judgment there. This smell, however, was clearly from piss-poor hygiene. The experience has made me super anxious when things get frisky with a new girl. Never know if I'm going to be welcome to the swamps of Dagobah again, or not. DR, drove 2 hours to have a lady give my wiener turf burn. Got to smell her stink factory. 1/10, don't recommend. Many years ago, I had one of those abdominal wraps that is supposed to exercise your abs by sending small electrical shocks to cause involuntary contractions. Tried it on another area, and didn't really feel like anything, except little non-painful shocks. But still pretty dumb. Thankfully I didn't sterilize myself. Drove from Kentucky to Illinois to meet an AOL girl I cybered with. Slept in the back of my pickup truck, in front of her house. because I did not think about how her parents would react to that creepy bullshit. Her dad took her on a long drive the next day, to pick up furniture or something. I hid in the neighborhood and did not realize it was the alternate entrance to the neighborhood. So, when she told her dad I was gone, they drove right by me, while I was reading a book in the front seat, and we never got together, because he protected her. Good dad, sad teenager. So, then I drove from there to New Jersey, for the same reason, and still got nothing. Meanwhile, at that second friend's house, I was AOLIMing other girls back home in Nevada, and one pretended to be a French girl with a crush on me, and I angrily outed her for being fake, because it did not occur to me she was just being flirty and playing a weird little nervous energy game. Turned out, she wanted to lose her virginity with me, according to her friend, but now she thinks I'm in a hole. So I was 0 for 3. Oh boy, being 17 was a confusing time. I was freshly out of a relationship with my abusive ex, and I just wanted the first sex after him to not mean anything, and not be with anyone important nor anyone I'd meet again. So, I went on this anonymous dating site, for hookups local to my region, and just went with the best person. Off I went, to the capital, without telling anyone at all where I was going or with whom. We met at a station in the outskirts of a suburb. I got into his car and he took me to a parking lot, close to the airport. We had sex in the back, where he had folded down his back seat, and then he drove me back to the main train station. I did some shopping for new underwear, went to a toilet and changed into fresh underwear. Freshened up, and then took the train back, to arrive at church in time, for rehearsal in my church choir. I don't know his name or anything. Couldn't pick him out of a lineup. Super dangerous. I could have been abducted or killed. Got my D stuck inside a toilet paper roll once. I was a teenager and corny, and so I thought, if I stuck it in and let it get hard, it would somehow be pleasurable. Well, it got hard, but when it did, it was too tight to do anything and started to hurt. So I freaked out, trying to figure out how to get it off. It took way too long to occur to me that I could just tear the cardboard roll. During a long bus trip, I was so corny that I couldn't take it anymore, so I whacked off in the little toilet. Just as I was starting to come, I saw the lock turn. I guess it was possible to open it from the outside. I shouted occupied, and jumped up. They didn't open the door, but during the startle, I had pulled my pants up and subsequently filled my underpants with jizz. The rest of the journey was rather uncomfortable, but the look of my messed up pants turned me on, when I saw them later. Guess it triggered a new fetish for me. When I was a teenager, I stuck my hands up an incredibly attractive girl's shirt, that I really wanted to bone, with her permission, and felt her boobies, nipples and everything. It was effing intense. Then afterwards, I peeped down her shirt, to see her boobs. I hadn't seen many real-life titties at that point. The problem? It was in the middle of high school, in the middle of the hall, around everyone in the hall, including teachers. We did not get caught, but came damn close to it. I was a effing idiot, for not asking her if we could go somewhere more private for this, but I wanted to see her titties so effing badly, I didn't even think of the consequences. I then proceeded to go to the bathroom to masturbate incessantly, because I couldn't have sex with her. She wouldn't want it anyway. She let me see her titties but she didn't want to F me. Spam. Drunk texts, to high school exes. 2 of them respond. Zipping on Adderall and Sam Adams, I went to the first girl's mobile home. I remember her being about 30 pounds heavier and had a cute anklet. And the bathroom, where the last thing I remember was running to it wrapped in her grandma's knitted blanket. Naked, I dropped the blanket and I puked. I 100% know I was shitting, at the same time I was puking. A lot of shit. I woke up the next morning, at girl number 2's home, in her basement, by her husband asking if I wanted to go to Carl's Jr. He was amused by my drunk texts to his wife, no harm. But I apologized. His wife told him that she texted back, asking if I needed a ride, and I took that as an invite, lol. They found me about a half-mile away from Waffle House and scooped me up, poop and barf covered, rinsed me and changed me, then put me on the couch. However, when I found my phone, it was loaded with messages from Girl 1, mostly going berserk, over the shit, all over her grandma's blanket, puke on the counters, and a mixture of both covering the wall, just under the window, that was hanging open. Ha! That was shamefully dumb. Honorable mention, to this masterpiece, from Tifa Thread. This Tifa didn't happen today but quite a few years back. For obvious reasons I'm using a throwaway account, as my family knows my main Reddit username. Anyway, around 8 years back, I lived in northern Mozambique, a coastal southern African country with quite a warm climate. My mother at the time was going through a health nut phase and only buying food she deemed healthy enough. One of these was coconuts. She would buy several coconuts a week to use in food from the local market. Anyway, being a corny teenager, I fapped in regular intervals. Unfortunately, there was some severely stressful examinations coming up for me, and as such, my fapping reached a higher peak than usual, and I was feeling pretty sexually frustrated. One day, I hear that my mother is going to be out for pretty much the entire afternoon. Corny me decides that it would be a fantastic idea to F a coconut. Honestly, to this day, I can't fathom why I thought that would be a good idea, but my train of thought back then was clearly somewhat clogged. I end up grabbing the coconut drill, and through 20-ish minutes of concerted effort, end up creating a hole large enough for me to stick my porker into. I decide it requires some lube, and grab the nearest slippery thing, some butter, before shoving it into the coconut, followed shortly by my meat. I F the coconut, and it actually feels pretty damn good, so I blow my load, shove the coconut under my bed and continue about my day. For the next week the coconut is my savior. Whenever I want to get off, I simply take it out and F it in its delightfully tight homemade batter each time by accumulating volumes of my semen and butter acting as a lubricant. It's heaven. Now before I continue, I'd best mention that at the time our area was experiencing quite humid, muggy weather which exacerbated an already existing fly problem. Disgustingly fat, bloated flies were commonly found around our house and the exterminators couldn't really do anything, because it was a localized area problem that would go away in the winter. About a week and a bit after the initial coconut F, I had been using it pretty much every day since then. I begin to notice a few more flies than usual, as well as an odd, unpleasant smell about my room. Must be the coconut, right? So, I decide that I'll F it once more, before I throw it out and get a new one. Worst mistake I have ever made. You see, the reason for the increased number of flies was that the coconut was evidently, in hindsight, a nearly perfect place to lay eggs. As I penetrate the coconut one last time, I begin to feel a strange wriggling sensation. Puzzled, I pull my cock out, to discover that it is covered in rotted and moldy butter and semen and teeming with tiny effing maggots. They were wriggling all over my D-head, and some were even trying to force their way up into my urethra. I screamed, and threw the coconut against the wall, which made the situation worse, by spilling the contents. Hours of vigorous cock scrubbing, vomiting, and cleaning the remnants were spent, reflecting on what the F I was doing with my life. Never again. Never again.